the edge of the universe, 400 men and women are probing the immeasurable blackness of space. Their leaders are an Earthman with no fear and a stranger with no heart. Travel beyond our time and solar system, into new galaxies, into worlds beyond your dreams. Star Trek, every week, in color on the NBC television network.
A lonely ship streaks along an endless path. It's the mammoth starship Enterprise. Follow her trackless journey each week on Star Trek. William Shatner stars as Captain James Kirk, Starship Commander, and Leonard Nimoy stars as Science Officer Spock, half Earthling, half Vulcanian. There are hazards that beset the Enterprise and its crew on board ship and on alien planets. Don't miss Star Trek in color.
The theme of original Trek, especially the cello version of Fred Steiner's opening, is probably timeless. Is timeless. It never gets old to this point. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Trekporeal number. It's 11. We're in the double digits now. So, yeah, I'm excited to be talking to a new viewer of the original series. And I mean, this is it's no joke, and it's no secret that the original Star Trek is my favorite TV show of all time. Is it the best show of all time? Probably not. But you know what? I love it to death. And I'll say that. I'll go on record and say I love it to death. So just before I bring my guest on, I just want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Got Pips here. What's up, man? You guys did a hell of a job talking Lord of the Rings earlier. So if you haven't checked out the White Cloaks, go give them a sub. Joseph Dredd, what's up, Joseph? How you doing? We got Daniel here. And we got Nassus here, and he's talking about my jawline. Well, I'm still trying to lose the weight. I've been keeping it. I just got to do a little more exercise and keep the diet going. So, but without further ado, I want to introduce my guest for the first time on the Trekporeal channel. And what's up, Mr. Golden Age Geek? How are you?
Hello there. Doing very well. Looking forward to this.
Dude, I couldn't help but notice that you had started watching the original series, and I was paying attention. Like you talked a couple of tweets talking, I think mainly about City on the Edge of Forever, and I was like, you know what? I was thinking of another Trekporeal idea. I was like, maybe I should bring Golden Age Geek on. Now, I've only interacted with you a couple of times on Twitter, so dude, welcome. Thanks for agreeing to do this with me.
No, it's a pleasure. I just recently finished season 1, and I was really happy to discuss it more. I've had some very fond memories, watching these, some laughs. It was just overall amazing. So yeah, anything to continue the discussion about it.
So before we even talk about Star Trek season 1, I was just curious, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you interested in? Like your history with science fiction, your interest in science fiction. Figuring you're from the UK, I figure there's a certain character with a sonic screwdriver that I assume you're a big fan of?
Yeah, so living here in the UK, that's amazing. Yeah, so my first introduction to, the main sort of fictional world was, of course, Doctor Who in the UK. Well, not so much nowadays, but, way back when. Doctor Who was everywhere, so, of course, naturally I got into it, and it led me down a path which meant I got into other franchises, different sci-fi, franchises. And, yeah, how do I describe it? I have dominated every area of fandom except Star Trek. I am a big fan of DC, Marvel, Doctor Who, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, everything you can think of. The one thing I have never seen is Star Trek, and that needed to change, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah, Star Trek is different. Like Star Trek is more niche. Like it's like you're nerdy when you come to Star Wars, and Star Wars itself is based off of old style comics. It's just, you have your heroes, you have your villains, over the top set pieces, you name it, excitement galore. Star Trek is a little different. It's more grounded. It tries to be more grounded science fiction. I mean, there's still a lot of fantasy elements like time travel and other stuff, but it's more science fiction. There's more thought provoking themes involved. There's that human. There's more of that human element that sets it apart. So I mean, that's why, like, a lot of people, it might turn off a lot of people because it's not that quite that action adventure. I mean, there is action adventure elements to sell to the TV channels at the time, stations. Excuse me. Like it was Star Trek was originally sold as a Western in space. Wagon Train of the Stars is what Gene Rod. That's how Mr. Roddenberry, the creator of Trek, pitched it to all the different networks. So, yeah. So I have to ask you, man, what made you want to start watching original Trek?
Well, it just seemed very intriguing, the whole premise about it. And as you touched upon, Star Wars is very much focusing more on how do the aliens interact with us, whereas Star Trek is more sort of how do we adapt to this new, bigger world.
Yeah,
I feel that's what is special about Star Trek. It is focusing more on how are the humans adapting to this wider world? How, we're going out, we're exploring these strange new worlds, and how do we sort of fit in this wider universe? I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, and it's how do we? I mean, the big thing, and I'm sure you already taken this, is that humanity at this in the 23rd century, pretty much became almost. I mean, I think 24th century was where the peak with TNG and everything hit the peak of what we call enlightenment or something. Humans kind of got past all the pettiness that has kept us down for years. Your war, politicking, squabbles, all this petty stuff that has led to a lot of stuff, a lot of bad stuff that's happened. So now we're in the future. We've gotten past things like racism. I mean, you haven't gotten to season 3 yet, but there's an episode called "Let That Be Your Last Battlefield." Be ready for that one. It's a good one. But you'll see the allegory right away. Right away in that one. I don't know if you've seen the image of two characters with black on one side, white on the other.
Yes, I've seen that image. Yeah, I was looking through lists of people's favorite episodes. Top 10 what they liked most about original series, and that image popped up a lot. So I'm assuming that is going to be a very prevalent episode. It's probably one that people talk about lots within the Star Trek fandom, I'm guessing, if it has that much of an impact upon viewing.
Oh yeah, it's pretty dark. I won't spoil it for you because I know you're on Metamorphosis right now, so I won't spoil it for you. So yeah, let's chat. Keep it so don't spoil too much of later seasons. Okay, we're here to talk about mainly season 1 of the original series. So you started with so how do you guys say Paramount Plus or whatever in where you guys are?
I don't believe so. There are a couple of streaming services that I know about because, of course, from YouTube, watching other creators. I know like HBO Max, that sort of thing. But there are a lot like HBO Max which we just don't have access to, and I think Paramount Plus is another one of those.
So how have you? How is Star Trek? I'm curious how Star Trek is available to you.
Netflix.
Oh, they still have it on Netflix. Yeah, they took it. They took everything. Star Trek used to be on every platform, but then they took it off in favor of so we can get a Paramount Plus, so that they can sell their Star Trek the cards and their Star Trek Discoveries and their Star Trek Worlds, retconning original series. Excuse me, sorry. But once again, so yeah, I have the Blu-rays. I've owned the VHSs. The first time I've ever been truly a nerd was collecting. I used to collect the blue VHS tapes in the mid 90s. And I used to, one thing about owning VHS, I don't know if you ever owned a VHS, but they come in these really, really fragile cardboard boxes. So if you keep the tape out and let's say the box falls on the floor and somebody steps on it, it's ruined. It's pretty much ruined. So I used to go out of my way to make sure that the boxes never got ruined. And it was just probably one of the nerdiest things I ever did. I used to that was probably one of the things I collected the most. Like I collected 50 tapes, each tape, one episode, $15, $15. And I didn't watch the entire series until it finally came on DVD by the season. So it took me years to watch this series from the time I was 12. I don't think I actually seen every episode until I was 20. So it was like an 8-year. This was like an 8-year journey for me. Like the show was not on TV. There was no Netflix or anything when I was growing up. If I was lucky, it would be on TV at midnight on a Saturday night, Sunday morning type of deal. And I used to stay up to record. I used to sneak into the living room, turn on the VCR, put in a blank tape, and then record an episode. So if I didn't own it on VHS, I would record it. So that's how crazy I was when it came to this franchise. So but hey man, you want to start with talk about the first episode you saw, Mantrap?
Actually, the first episode I watched was The Cage, which was the original pilot. Which, actually, I don't know if you want to talk about this yet, because of course, in one of the later episodes, the first two-parter, that episode is integrated into that one. So I don't know whether you want to touch upon that when we get to those.
Yeah, yeah, you're talking about the Menagerie, the two-parter. Yeah, we'll talk about The Cage with the Menagerie. That's what I think would be the best idea. Because The Cage never came out. The Cage never aired in its entirety. That didn't see the light of day until the 80s, until 1986, when it was released on VHS. And there was actually Ron Berry himself made a little intro to the episode, which was kind of full of crap, because what he says didn't represent what the episode actually was. So, but we'll get into that. So, okay, so you saw The Cage first. Interesting. Yeah, the black and white stuff was not in the Menagerie, by the way. I don't know if you noticed.
No, I didn't. Well, was it originally aired in black and white?
No, the Cage was never aired. Okay. So what you saw, what fans knew at the time was only in the Menagerie. So all the colors. So when they released it, the black and white stuff was stuff that was stuff that was cut from the Menagerie to save time. So all the stuff that's in color was in the Menagerie.
Okay. So what was the black and white stuff? Was it extra footage?
Oh yeah, it was like additional scenes that they didn't include. Like they're like them in the there was one where they showed the gorilla. They showed the gorilla, and they showed a few. There was additional scenes in the briefing room with Spock and Number One. Nothing too bad, and and the ending was different too. So what you see in the Menagerie, with Pike walking into the elevator with Vina, the girl who was put back together by the Telosians. That was actually how the Cage ended. With so he leaves, but yet a version of him, an illusion of him, stays with her. So she still has her mates, even though he's not really there. It's a weird ending, and that's why the networks rejected it. They didn't understand what it was talking about. And to me, it was talking about just the concept of, becoming infirm to the point where you can't do anything. So all you have is your brain. So what can you do? And the menagerie kind of followed up on that with Pike being completely immobilized. Like he cannot, like as McCoy says in that episode, he can't reach out and no one can reach in. And the only way to communicate with him is to ask him a yes or no question. Yes, he goes beep, and no, he goes beep, beep. Remember that?
Yeah. I when I started my watch of this, actually I tried to start watching Star Trek a few years ago, and I watched The Cage, and then for no reason, I didn't hate it or anything. I was just a bit younger. It didn't particularly interest me then, so I just sort of left it. So I didn't rewatch The Cage, so I don't really remember the original ending, because I believe in the Menagerie, the ending is sort of changed a bit. And I know in terms of, it sort of hints at Pike finally living happily with Vina, but I don't remember that original ending. But no, it was very interesting. I did like what they did with that.
So then you watched the Man Trap, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be honest, I saw the Man Trap when I remember the 30th anniversary. They were showing episodes, and I was a kid. I'm watching it on TV, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? And like people are dying left and right. I mean, this was like a horror movie. And you know how back in the day, science fiction and horror were kind of, intertwined like this. Like even the movie Forbidden Planet, which is a movie I'd recommend if you're watching original Trek now. Original Trek got a lot of its ideas from the 50s movie Forbidden Planet. And there was a little bit of horror slasher elements in that. So the first episode of Star Trek that was ever aired was a slasher episode. So what did you think of the idea of an episode being a slasher type of deal?
Well, yeah, as you were saying, with sci-fi and horror going sort of hand in hand, you do sort of detect that is the sort of themes that are going on there. When it comes to those sort of slasher, films or shows or whatever, I have seen a few of them. What are they called? There's a certain subgenre of horror. Is it the Hammer films? Like there was. Is that? Am I doing that right? The original Christopher Lee Dracula films were
the Hammer direct.
Yeah, so that sort of era, I've seen a lot of films from there. So it does sort of ring a bell, certain elements where you think, oh, that's taking inspiration from that. So yeah.
So this is the beginning where they show. You see, I loved how the one thing I took away from this, especially this first scene right here, is how the killer, which is spoiler alert, takes different takes different forms and appears differently to different people, and it's your typical shapeshifter type of deal. Shapeshifter needs something from people that is that it needs to live, and because of that it ends people. So it was, to me, this was not a very good episode to begin the show with, but this was something that the network, this was NBC, aired Star Trek. This was an episode that they demanded be the first episode, despite the recommendation of the creator. So we get a nice little clip of the monster right. Let me say again, right there, without spoiling too much. So yeah,
it's probably best that we have this up, because, as I said, I do need to refresh my brain a little bit. Just watch it for the first time, This is a very sort of freakish sort of look to the monster here. This episode, I wouldn't, as you say, there are probably better episodes that they could have gone with, and I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite episodes of the season, but it was a fairly decent introduction to the franchise. with the element of the shapeshifter, it's sort of leading into the idea of it was kind of different how they did it, because they could have just had a generic shapeshifter, but they did it in a way where it sort of made it very personal to the people on the ship. You know, their needs, their desires. That's what lured the villain in. It wasn't a simple, this is a villain. It was very much sort of a grey thing. This is a person, you know, I know, I want, I desire, and it very much showed the human element to the villain, playing on those sort of emotions.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I mean, the one thing, I mean, this was early, so this was before Star Trek really had its solid footing in what it was. And so this was one of the few times where they actually had to end the villain. Because usually, I mean, in the later episode that we'll get to, they encounter it starts off very similar, you know, equivalent, you know, very slasher, like people are getting picked off one by one, but there's a reason for that. And what's interesting is that they ultimately come to an understanding with the creature, and they get the miners to come to an understanding with the creature. I'm sure you know which episode I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Silicon, you know. And it's just that type of thing that is really inspired, and what has really gotten people upset about how New Trek has conducted itself. Because the one thing that that this series, and then if you watch, you know, some of the later shows, the thing that's most important is life. And life is just, if there's a way to save lives, if there's a way to come to an understanding, that's very important. And to me, it's a positive message, and it's something that has really endeared me to this franchise. If New Trek was the show that if Star Trek was like how New Trek is now, back when I was a kid, I would never have picked it up. I would have never taken a liking to it. And like I'll but like I said, and I like people who somehow like both. I'll just say I don't understand, and it's just mind-boggling. But sorry, I'll let you go over your point.
No, I was going to elaborate on that point. The way Star Trek was branded to me, the way I saw these original series, you know, sort of presented online, was Star Trek is presenting this utopian future, which does have problems, but ultimately at the end, it's showing a brighter path. This is what we should aspire to achieve. This is what humanity should strive to be like. It's very much, as you were saying, the later episodes, it isn't as simple as, oh, the villain's been captured, the villain's been killed, that sort of thing. It's very much, how do we move on from here? It's not going to just be a simple, right, it's done, bye-bye. These are the consequences. How do we make the best of it?
Exactly. And it's just, and the thing is, I mean, there's like you said, there's a lot of gray. I mean, I don't know if you ever listened to Robert Meyer Burnett. One of the things that he says, and I totally believe him on this, is that there's really no villain until J.J. Abrams stuff. There was really no villains in Star Trek. They were just simply antagonists, people who had an opposing viewpoint or had an opposing objectives to our heroes. You know, they'll do what must be done, or do things at the expense of others for a greater good, that type of deal. So even I'm sure we'll get to Khan, for instance. You've watched Spacey, haven't you?
Yep.
Khan. I mean, Khan is he's a bad guy, but you know what, dude? He was likable, and yet even Kirk and McCoy and Scotty and them were like, they respect, despite the fact that they knew who he is. He was a dictator. They knew who he was, but yet they still had respect for him. They had to respect that baffled Spock. I don't know if you remember that little laugh where they're all, you know, Spock's like offended that they're all, you know, kind of, you know, speaking somewhat highly of Khan during their briefing.
Yeah, I do remember that. I liked there was a string of episodes that ended with that sort of comedic relationship between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. It was very interesting, and it really showed the different sides of the characters. And you see Spock, into how, you know, logically and emotionally speaking, that's how you're going to judge different situations. And it just added so much depth to it. And touching on the point with, someone like Khan, the thing we say about modern entertainment is that it always tells you what to think, what stance you should take on a problem, whereas Star Trek very much left it up to interpretation. Here's a character, here are their motivations. There are some good behind it and there's some bad behind it. Ultimately, that's what most people have. There's good intentions or bad intentions, and then there's some good and bad that goes along with that.
Yeah, I agree. So so this is the scene I was talking about, where they identify Khan right here. So I don't know if you know, but they made a movie. They made a sequel. Did you know they made a sequel to this episode?
I know about
the motion picture. Did you know that?
Yeah, The Wrath of Khan.
Okay, all right. I just had to ask if you knew. I mean, I'm sure everybody's talked about it at least once. I know, like, one of my favorite streams that I've listened to a couple years ago was Critical Drinker and Neurotic talking about The Wrath of Khan. Now, I liked how they start off talking about how crappy Picard season 1 was, and believe me, they weren't wrong. It was bad. I watched it. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever seen, until I saw The Wheel of Prime. Pips can attest to that in the chat. But yeah, I'm still drinking. By the way, I'm drinking Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. Just drinking some more of this. So, but just listening to that stream, just listening to what really inspired me. This was before I started my channel. What really inspired me to want to talk about the really good stuff was listening to streams like that. Hearing people talk about what makes something really good, what makes it timeless, and why it should still be timeless. Why people who haven't seen it should check it out. And plus, I knew a lot of younger people that only saw the J.J. Abrams stuff, and I'm just like, dude, I have to do something. I'm like, I have to do something about this. Like, that's not what Star Trek is. It's an all but name. I mean, it's not an action adventure. I mean, it's not quite the action adventure high adrenaline rush. I mean, there is action adventure elements. I mean, it was sold as a Western, like I said earlier, but there's more to it. There's more, like you said, more depth. And that's what made this series, timeless for 40 years until, bad producers took over and just don't understand the property and tried to milk it for what it's worth.
Yeah, the creativity, the love for this has been extracted from everything in entertainment. And and when you were saying at the start about Star Trek is very much a niche thing, these properties used to be made by fans for fans. Now it's too corporate. There's too many rules, and there's loads of structure that they have to follow. But there isn't anything that escapes the norm and shocks you. At the time, Star Trek was very much a different thing in many different ways, but also the ideas they were conveying. And you do need something that makes people go, whoa, this has never been seen before. What does this mean? You need something like that. You need something non-conventional.
Yeah, I mean, you ever hear of a channel called Dave Cullen?
Yes.
Okay. He recently did a video talking about, once again, how New Trek is different, but he talked about something I never really thought of until you just brought it up. This was different. Like, Star Trek was really revolutionary for its time. Like, it was counterculture. It was part of the counterculture of the 60s. And it's interesting how now it's not. It's totally for the system, as many would put it. So, but doing that episode about racism was a big deal. Having there was an episode where there's an interracial kiss. I don't know if you know about that. That's also in season 3
between Kirk and Uhura.
Oh, okay, so you do know about that.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of hard to escape the information about the series, but
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know if you've ever read The Wheel of Time, but I've been reading the books. I've started reading the books, and I've been struggling to avoid spoilers myself. So I've been avoiding looking things up as much as I can. So I know how it can be. So, but like, heck, did you know that Martin Luther King was a fan of Star Trek, the original series, when he was alive?
I remember reading that Nichelle Nichols was thinking about leaving the role, but he apparently told her, "No, this is, this is a very important role. What it represents to people. This is gonna, this is inspiring people. So make sure you stay in the role and show that, someone like us can be a powerful figure."
Yeah, I mean, it did. That was good, but there was also some, how like in all great things, there's always, there's good and there's bad and everything. Well, I think the little bit of the bad was it made Whoopi Goldberg's career, and now we get The View.
God.
I'm kidding. I know. I'm kidding. I know some people watch The View. My mom watches The View. Don't quite agree on a lot of their stuff, but hey. It's just me. but we got but it's inspired. Star Trek has inspired a lot of people. Like there are scientists, people who have went. I mean, I went into part of the reason why I went into engineering. It wasn't because I was good at building things. I went into it because I was a fan of the original series. I was a fan of Scotty in particular. And it was something of a challenge. One thing that shows like Star Trek really do is they really inspire you to try to better yourself to the best of your ability. And TNG, there's an episode called Tapestry in TNG that takes that to the next level with how, the choices we make, the roads we take and everything. And especially with the character of Captain Picard. So I mean, here it really does the same thing. Like this has once again inspired so many people to go into so many disciplines, science. Like Scotty is not Scotty. The character Scotty has inspired people to become engineers. James Doohan himself has kept someone from committing suicide by telling them, "Hey, I want to see you at a convention." This was years later, probably in the 80s or 90s. I mean, these actors I have nothing but respect for. I mean, he's no longer with us. DeForest Kelly, who plays McCoy, people went into medicine because of McCoy. I mean, these characters are just that damn inspirational.
Yeah, this is something that all the shills on social media don't really understand. This is more than just a show. It's more than just a set of characters. This is what people base their lives upon. This is something which sparks people's futures. I mean, I'm not going to take any digs at anyone in my real life sort of thing, but when I was younger, I really wanted some positive role models. So I looked to these fictional characters, these heroes, these people that would go in, save the day, tell you everything was going to be better in the future, that sort of thing. And this is what really does connect people. This, as I say, it's more than just a show. This is what we can live up to be. If this is coming from someone's mind, a writer, people believe in this future. This is what we can do, and that's just amazing. And I didn't know about the actor who played Scotty saving someone from suicide, but that's what this stuff can do. It can bring people together.
Yeah,
more than anyone can possibly comprehend.
And that's what makes. And I hate to keep bringing this up, but that's what makes me so. It's what makes me so upset with New Trek in general, because it does the exact opposite. It doesn't bring people together, and I'm sure. I mean, you do. I mean, you have your own website. You write a lot of articles. You've covered this quite a bit. You know probably this way more than I do, but all media does now is blame other fans that have a different viewpoint, instead of holding themselves accountable and holding themselves to a higher regard, saying, hey, maybe we should try to make something that will appeal to everyone and not just just the few. How about thinking? I mean, it's weird. I have to bring up this is a Wrath of Khan quote: the needs of the many, or the appeal of the many outweighing the appeal of only the few. It's crazy when you think about that. And it's just, and you get to see how the actors act on Twitter, especially especially I hate to say Mr. Decay, but yeah, like I literally tell him whenever he says something and it's based on poor judgment, I just say, go away, dude. Just stop. Go away, do something. And then one time I got destroyed for it on Twitter. It was glorious.
These people who are writing, for example, modern Star Trek, they claim to be fans when they're not. We know they have probably never seen any of this, amazing content before. And the reason we know that they aren't fans of this and they probably haven't even seen it or know about it is because if you watch it, you understand the message of, there isn't one right answer. There isn't a correct side. You'll have, at the end of an episode, Kirk will, the villain or the situation's been resolved, and there'll be a hanging, thread of, was it right? Did we make the right decision?
I mean, was like at the end of This Side of Paradise, which was the episode where they go to the planet. The planet is being bombarded with these violent Berthold rays from the sun. So if you're down there, you're gonna be exposed to a bad case of really bad sunburn to the point where you're gonna freaking die after maybe after a week. But yet these people were alive. And they revealed that there was this flower from outer space on the planet. It shoots spores in your face, and it makes you kind of high. It was like you were high and you were immune to the effects of the sun. And and everybody was just like, everybody was just like, gracefully enjoying paradise because the episode was called This Side of Paradise. And
I did like this episode.
Yeah, and that was the one where Spock gets hit. Charles Bronson's wife, Jill Ireland, was the girl, Layla, in the episode. And fun fact, I don't know if you've ever seen Charles Bronson. He's really jacked, and he was in all the Death Wish movies. So if you didn't want him to come after you, if you tried to mug him, he'd shoot you in the face. But like, Nimoy was actually worried that, like, if he hugged Jill Ireland, that Charles Bronson would come after him. But beside the point, the question that that was asked at the end of that episode was, "Is man meant for paradise?" And then Kirk had a very interesting answer. He's like, "No, maybe we weren't. Maybe we were meant to fight and claw our way out of all of our deals. That is what makes us human." I don't know if you recall that one. I thought that was a very interesting one.
No, that is easily one of my favorite episodes. There were so many questions which were posed in that episode, such as, these people are living in an eternal state of happiness, but it's not real. They may feel happy, it's not real. We need to be aware of what is actually happening. Do we tell people what they want to hear or tell them the truth? And although, telling them what they want to hear or giving them the life they want to lead, such as, all the people on that planet, it's not real, though. We need to actually bring all this happiness into reality instead of just pretending that everything's not okay. We do live in an imperfect world, but that's kind of what humans are good at. As Kirk says, maybe we were supposed to struggle, work hard. That's what gives us purpose. Everyone nowadays, he seems to think that, we should just accept everything, this and that. But psychologically speaking, humans perform at their best when they have a task to perform, when they have something to overcome. They have to be alert. They have to, go out there and fight. That's what we have to do. And that is our paradise. It may, not seem like the most perfect thing. There's struggle, there's violence, there's poverty, this and that. But that is what fuels humans. And that is what has led to what we have nowadays with, all the stuff that has come from all the people throughout history. That's what has sparked what we have now, all these different creations. People had to struggle to create this greatness.
I agree. And one thing I've learned about myself, especially the type of entertainment I like is everything exactly as you described, like seeing characters having to overcome an obstacle, or in my case, a villain, which I feel in a lot of modern entertainment is lacking. So that, I mean, to me, that is what makes characters compelling. It's what helps make them relatable. And in Trek's case, like you even feel for the antagonists like half the time. And you talking about how people are easily, easily accept things. The last Trekporeal I did, we talked about, me and Salty Traveling Sea talked about a particular episode called "The Taste of Armageddon." If you remember that one, that's the one where they fight the wars with computers.
Yes.
Remember how the AI, the computer AI, calls out where on the planet there's an attack, and it just says, "Hey, this place was attacked in this range, and this place is classified according to the computer destroyed by fusion bombs or whatever made up bullshit." And the people who are in that vicinity, now I don't think the show really explains how they know this, but they have a means to record who was there, and the people have to sheepishly herd themselves into these disintegration machines to off themselves to maintain the guise of a war that's been going on for 500 years. Can you imagine that? Like, how I like my last episode was talking about how relevant that was. Can you imagine that?
No, it's absolutely insane. When I first watched it, I was trying to wrap my head around, what, what is happening, why are these people doing these things, and it's very much. I mean, I think the thing I took away from that episode was about, ideas and how the individual is not really considered valuable. It's all about the overall goal, or the collective at the end of the day, and is very much promoting individualism. I think that's a very key thing you should take away from it. And there's so many different themes you could take away from that, with all the technology and how it was utilized by these people, and wars, and the people at the top of leadership of the opposing sides, and how the people are used as disposables. I think there's so many things you can pick from that. It's absolutely filled with I mean, I would say allegory, but that's kind of taken that's not really thought of as a good thing nowadays. It's very much off-putting when you hear people talking about allegory, but it very much did represent very key things. And Star Trek, the original series, came out not so long after World War II. So I feel, me watching it for the first time now, I'm still going to get a lot from it, but I have to sometimes think, people watching it for the first time back then, how relevant it would have been, and the fear they must have felt to see other people going through these situations.
Oh yeah, I mean the Cold War was still going on, Vietnam was going on. I think the idea of having hearing about the casualties in Vietnam was a big influence on this, and especially I forget there's just the idea this episode in particular, because I did that last Trekporeal. I actually did a little digging into the idea behind this episode. There's a neutron bomb that was basically designed to off people without offing like the equipment, without destroying the buildings. It's just killing the people. And that's where this idea came from. And the computer was was still a pretty new thing. So they just thought, let's have the computers start running wars and everything. So it's just crazy how like this particular episode was so unacceptable to the point where Kirk was willing to destroy the planet in order to save his people and to stop willing to threaten to destroy this planet, which is something that hasn't been done like really ever after this. So it's just crazy when you really think about it. And once again, like, the fact that they came up with this back then just shows you how ahead of its time this show was. So, and they did something similar in the previous episode. Remember the one with the Archons? Remember the one with the people that were of the body? The ones that were like directly mentally controlled by the computer?
Is that the one where they go to the town that sort of resembles old Day Earth, and then come nighttime they all turn savage?
Festival, yeah, and it
Yeah.
just made me. I was watching it in 2020. I'm sure you all know what happened in 2020 during that summer of the thing that rhymes with dove. I'll say, I watched the episode. I was like, "Holy crap!" I couldn't help but think of current events when I saw that. If you know what I mean. And then, but you find out like there's because of the fact that they were controlled, there was no what do you call it? There was no progress. Everything was stagnant. And the one time they're like questioning, like, do we break the Prime Directive? I'm assuming you know what the Prime Directive is. Not interfering with, the cultures of a planet, of an alien planet. Like, the Starfleet goes out into the galaxy. They are not allowed to make contact with people that are below warp capability. So if they do, then it could possibly endanger the civilization. Because of the fact that people are not quote unquote mature enough to handle like this knowledge or how to handle dealing with an intergalactic community and everything. It's an idea I really have to research. It's been a while since I've talked. If I've thought about the Prime Directive itself, but there are so many times where they break in the Prime Directive because of things like this, where civilizations are being suppressed or being or not allowing to grow because of how things are set up. And that's kind of what Kirk, Spock, and McCoy do, is they try to help resolve situations like that. It still pisses off the brass, but hey, nobody's perfect. So
yeah, the scene where Kirk and Spock are talking with the computer, it was a very telling scene, and as you say, it did kind of I didn't think of it at the time, but yeah, it does resemble a lot about current day events. And I think it does show how people dedicate themselves so much to a cause where the computer is stagnating the culture, the progression. It very much shows how too much belief in an idea and not enough creativity being allowed to bleed through it isn't the greatest thing. It's good that we uphold our values that our culture is based on. However, we do have to think outwardly. We can't just exist within our own space. It is very good too, and that's the entire theme of the show, actually venturing out there, seeing what's new, what's different, how we can adapt, what we can take from and improve. That was a very telling scene. It was I would say it's probably one of my favorite scenes, the talk with the computer, and how you have someone, or the computer is not necessarily a person, but when you have something or someone reflecting on their actions and seeing what has come from that, it is very much a moment of realization. I think that's a lot which people could relate to, in the sense of people looking back on their lives when they're a bit older and seeing what they did in the past and how maybe it wasn't so good and how you need to move on from that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The big thing that that they talk about that allows Kirk to off this computer, or by telling it to off itself, is the fact that the computer reserves creativity for itself, which I don't know how a computer can be creative, but hey, this is 60s science. This is 60s TV. But just the fact that it stifles creativity in individuals and stifles purpose is what basically keeps humanity from progressing and moving forward and everything. And that's kind of what allows Kirk to kind of use its logic against the computer, and basically tells it to off itself. You are that evil, blah blah blah, and everything. So, and of course, like the computer's like, help me, blows itself up and everything. So, but yeah, like there was quite a few. I mean, these were really, in my opinion, really well written, high stakes episodes. I gotta ask you, now that we're almost an hour in, I was just curious, like, were there like episodes that you really, really liked, if you remember, like, you probably don't remember the names, but like, were there episodes that really, you really enjoyed to the point where you remembered them pretty well? You took a lot away from that. I'm just curious what those episodes are, if you can even recall.
I do have a list of the episodes here, so I'll go through them, and I'm sure it will ring a bell when I go over the names. But there were some of those episodes, like you were saying, where I do remember them. If there are, if someone said, Star Trek, these are the episodes I would think of. So let's see. Okay, so the Menagerie is probably a prime example of that. But some other ones would be Balance of Terror. I thought that was a very, very good one.
That was that's to me, that's I recommend watching that third. I recommend watching episodes production order, but if you really want to get to grasp the original series to see what Star Trek truly is, I usually like to begin with Corbomite Maneuver, because to me that is the ultimate representation of what Star Trek is. And then if you want to introduce the characters, there's The Naked Time. And then if you want to do some world building, best way to begin is with Balance of Terror, like you said. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, Balance of Terror is a great episode.
Yeah, I think the first one that really stood out to me was probably Shore Leave. I think watching it back, I think that was the first episode where they actually did on set, on location shooting, because I think all the other ones looked very manufactured sets. I think this was, if I'm looking at this correctly, because of course I watched it in a different order to what everyone else would have seen it in. But in terms of the timeline in which I watched it, I think Shore Leave was the first episode which used on location shooing.
Yeah, so I think you might be right. They shot it in like I think they shot it in like a zoo or somewhere in LA to be sure. I think it was like a zoo or like a wildlife place. I'm trying to remember, but like, Shore Leave was a whimsically hilarious episode. The concept was just so out there. Like, I'm trying. I want to find that clip, and I'm sure you know what clip I'm thinking of. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Where is it? Where are you? Wait, no, that's not it. So McCoy sees the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. It is so ridiculous. Let me see. I'm trying to find that clip. Where is it? Okay, got it. Perfect. Right here. This is where it's like, oh, my whiskers, I'll be late. It just this is like this is probably I laughed when I first saw this. And just the whole idea of a planet that can instantly manufacture whatever it is you're thinking so that you could have a good time. Seriously, like, and if you want to experience danger, you can experience danger too. It's crazy.
I think that's the thing I took away from the episode really liking. Of course, the episode being called Shore Leave, it wasn't only a break for the characters, but also for us, because before Shore Leave, we went through some pretty emotionally impacting episodes. So this was very much a break for us. This was just, it was a nice light-hearted thing. And I think also what's so great about it is come the end of the episode, you find out that no, there isn't any overarching villain. This is just what this planet entails. That, as I say, there's loads of grey in Star Trek, but sometimes there isn't a villain. Sometimes it's just a different idea or a different concept or way of life. And this is very much what this episode was. There isn't a big bad to fight. This is just the way of life on this planet. I think that's so interesting, because most of the time you're always looking for, okay, who's actually the person behind all this? Who's scheming? Who's manufacturing all these situations? When actually, no, there isn't anything like that.
Another thing, and then you just kind of brought this point up, and this also harkens back to the Horta in The Devil in the Dark, the silicon creature, is that bad things happen probably because of we don't understand. And it's our responsibility as humans to try to understand, get to the bottom of what's going on, and see if there's a way to resolve things peacefully. To me, that's what Star Trek is really about. Like, throughout the series, I mean, Kirk himself, people see Kirk, they think, we come in peace, shoot to kill, like the song, which is most certainly not the case. They only, use weapons when they have no choice. Harkening back to, remember the episode where they encountered the super being Trelane?
Yes.
Oh, my dear Captain Kirk, where are your weapons, Captain? Don't you display your weapons? Because he's dressed up like a French warlord or something like that. Warlord from like the 17th century.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, that was very interesting.
And you do get a cameo of the salt creature from the Man Trap. You get a little cameo on display in his little castle. But that was like that was a really funny episode. But it was also terrifying because he had the ability to do almost anything. And like, so when he says, like, there's a point where you like, he has the ability to make people appear, disappear, whatever. Like, he literally transports Kirk just like at the flip of his hand, like this, to an area outside the atmosphere, and he's coughing, brings him back. He's like, now you know who's in charge here, Captain, and you will do behave, or I shall be very, very angry. The quote, that's the actual quote from the episode. And like, I think I was 12 when I saw it. I was like, oh, things are gonna go down. I can't wait to see the rest of this episode. But that episode was, I remember, because that was one of the episodes I actually stayed up and recorded late on a Saturday, technically Sunday morning, because it was midnight here in the States. And I watched it, like, saw how the episode began with Sulu and Kirk randomly vanishing from the bridge. Like, they just poof out of the bridge, and that's how the episode begins. So, like, Spock's like, emergency, full reverse power, because they're in a star desert, and you're like, what is going on here? And that's why like, shows back then knew how to get people excited and invested, like, from the very first scene. I wish it was like that now, because I'm watching modern shows, and there's a few shows that a lot of people like that I saw, and I was just like, I'm not really excited. I mean, they were okay, but I wasn't too excited. And it just didn't leave me wanting more. And for instance, I've gotten into this argument with a lot of people, the show Andor.
Yeah.
Which I kind of broke my own rules to watch, because I said I would never watch any more Disney Star Wars, but I did for Andor because a few people I respected recommended, they really liked it. So
I don't know how you feel about it. What are your overall thoughts on Andor?
I just saw it was decent. It was better than, it was probably one of the best of Disney's shows, but I just found it underwhelming.
Okay, I think I'm probably fair in saying I may have enjoyed it a bit more than
no,
you
I'm
do,
sure you did. I'm in the minority on this one.
No, but I can understand why you weren't that invested in it, and I think it was probably the best show that they've done, but the one that nobody seemed to really watch or care about afterwards. It was the one where there wasn't really a lot of talk about it.
Yeah, I wonder why. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure a lot of people didn't watch it because of the show that came up before that, which I won't even utter. So, but yeah, that was our quick little thing on Andor. So I'll have to do a stream talking about Andor at some point. So, but yeah, once again, like the Squire Gothos Trelane, great episode. Whoever watches TOS, can't wait to show you. So, so what was another? Were there a few other episodes you want to talk about? City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes, I do have a bit to say about that. Because I did like it. I always see in top 10 lists of like best episodes or whatever, people always say that The City on the Edge of Forever was, or is the best. I mean, I'm in kind of two minds about it, because it's very much the most unique Star Trek episode, I think. However, I don't know if you've seen Doctor Who or not. But it's a bit like this one episode of Doctor Who called Blink. Now, Blink is an episode which doesn't feature any of the main characters. So on its own, it's very much a good episode of television. However, is it a good Doctor Who episode? And I think that's very much what I'm thinking about this episode. I did like it, and it did have loads of Star Trek elements, like all the other episodes that I did really like. But it's that different to the point where I'm thinking, this is a very good episode of television, but is it a good Star Trek episode? Now, I think it is a really good Star Trek episode, but it's kind of hard to compare with other episodes because it is that different and loads of different things are touched upon.
Yeah, I saw your tweet on that, and I was kind of it's one of the few times I was triggered by someone's response saying that this wasn't Star Trek enough. And I was just like, part of Star Trek is going out there and exploring and learning something new about the universe. It's not just exploring strange new worlds and seeking out new life. It's just it's like I'm going to quote Q from the end of Next Generation. It's about just discovering other means of existence and other ideas that are out there. And this was a very poignant idea, which I think is the reason why in this universe time travel is frowned upon, because you go back in time, you change something and you have to revert it back. Reverting it back might not necessarily be something that may be easy, I'll say. Like, for instance, letting someone die in order for history to go the way it was, because maybe that one single person at one focal point, which I'll be honest, it was very convenient for this episode, but that's beside the point. It's just the fact that you had to almost go to the point of losing your soul in order to save your reality. Like, the stakes were high in this. Like, it's really hard to describe, but I like the way this episode ends. And I don't know, this was a question that was brought up on previous streams that I've been on. Do you think this episode should have been the finale for season 1?
I would say yes, because I think what it didn't disappoint me, but I think what I was expecting from the future episodes is, because of the emotional impact in this was so big, I thought it would carry over to the other episodes. We'd see Kirk, not being as optimistic as he usually is. I thought we'd still feel that loss from his love dying.
Yeah, and the thing was, and like this pretty much, I'm not going to show the rest of it, but this scene pretty much perfectly describes what is going on. So that's Kirk holding back McCoy. So the reason why history changed was because McCoy prevented someone from dying. In this case, Kirk is holding McCoy back to stop him from keeping her from dying. And the way Shatner delivers is like, he doesn't say anything. And if I can get a close up of his face, because they show a close up of his face, there's McCoy. He's just like, "What the hell are you doing? How can you let me do this? Here, this is the perfect face." He has his eyes closed, and he's just like dealing with it. And McCoy's like, "You deliberately stopped me? What is wrong with you?" And then Spock in his dispassionate way just tells him, "Doctor, he knows what he knows. And then that's basically how the episode pretty much, that's how that they get sent back. After that happens, the timeline is repaired, and then they're sent back, and they go right through the space donut. But here is Kirk's face at the end, and he doesn't say anything. He just simply says, "Let's get the hell out of here," and that's how the episode ends. And it's probably one of the most chilling episodes, probably one of the most chilling moments ever. And they played the same clip. They played the same ending theme. I'm a big fan of the music in this series, but they played the same ending theme that they ended Mud's Women, Charlie X, and a few others, Alternative Factor. They ended those episodes on that same kind of somber ending theme. And I use that. That's what I'm currently using in my outro for my members and all that. So yeah, I'm lucky that they did the music, the score for the show does not get copyrighted. The theme does. So I might get hit because I used a part of the theme in my intro. So, but it's just crazy. Like I really dug, like as a kid, I really dug the music. It was so different from modern stuff in the 90s. Did you take it? What did you think of the music?
Yeah, the music is very atmospheric. It does put you in that mood that, of what Star Trek encompasses. I have to say, going into season 2, the music is very much different. And I'm sure that's even for the original versions as well. I don't think this is exclusive to the remasters, but the intro changes at the start of season 2 and with season 3. I have to say, I'm not a fan of it.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't like the it sounded like they used different equipment. So like the first season had cello arrangements, they had beautifully done musical arrangements, and it just, I don't know, the music got more whimsical in season 2. I mean, I don't know, if you ever watched Amok Time? Have you seen Amok Time, right?
Yeah, that was the first episode of season
one
2.
Where Kirk and Spock go to Vulcan and they fight, and they play that very famous piece. Da, 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 da. I mean, it's okay, but I still prefer season 1's. The later seasons did not have the atmosphere that season 1 did. Like season 1, you just
Agreed.
felt it. You just felt what's going on. And it felt like that there was a lot more with the music. There was a lot more weight. So it gave the episodes a lot more weight, and that was something that I always really appreciate, and really, like, for years I was hoping to be able to listen to the score, which I could never do until La La Land Records released. Because they're a nerdy group that has been releasing scores that have never been available to the public before. Like they did the Star Trek series, they did the entire score for Beverly Hills Cop. So the soundtrack was just like the pop songs that they played. They didn't play the actual score by Harold Faltermeyer, who also did Top Gun and all that. So all the synthesized beats and all that. But yeah, and once they did that, and I was able to get a copy of it. I conflate Star Trek with almost every project I do in some form. That's just how important this is to me. So
yeah. And going back into the episode itself, I think what works so well about this episode is because usually in modern entertainment, in these sci-fi franchises, the reason time travel is sort of frowned upon is because it's used so much to the point where there is no impact of it. And in Star Trek, there are a few episodes that actually have time travel in it, so that when it is used, it is felt. The stakes are felt, that they are so high, and I think this is what works so well with this episode as well. And touching on the shaded morality that Star Trek presents, when you have Kirk holding back McCoy, and McCoy is very much in the mindset of, you've just done an evil thing. And Star Trek, as we've touched upon many times in this stream, it does talk about, not everything is good, not everything is bad. Kirk had to do a bad thing by letting this woman die, but overall it was for the greater good.
Yeah, and it was just that idea came from, I don't know if you ever heard of Harlan Ellison, the science fiction writer.
I believe I read that this episode was initially written by someone else, and then they rewrote it, and this is the version we got.
Okay, so all right, I'll set the story straight. So Harlan Ellison originally wrote this episode. Harlan Ellison is known for, there's a science fiction movie that came out in the 70s called A Boy and His Dog. And it's, you hear the name and you think, oh, it's a Disney movie. No, it's actually a fucked up movie that was the inspiration for movies like Mad Max, especially The Road Warrior. It's about morally, and it's about a guy, and it's about a teenager, and he has a talking dog, or at least we think the dog talks. Maybe he's nuts or something. We don't know. But it's a post-apocalyptic world. It's all desert, and there's a lot of moral ambiguity, and that's kind of what Harlan Ellison was known for. And he also wrote a short story that literally was literally ripped off, that James Cameron literally ripped off for the basis of Terminator, the first Terminator movie. So that's why in the opening credits, you see based on a story by Harlan Ellison, because him and his agent got wind of it, and they're like, you're gonna credit me, you're gonna pay me for using my idea. like the idea of two different people on two different sides of a war going back in time to fighting each other was from a story that he did. So Harlan Ellison wrote The City on the Edge of Forever, and it was totally different, to the point where like he wasn't part of the staff. He didn't know the characters as well. And one thing about whenever they have writers come in, the writers will put out ideas, but a lot of the times the stuff that they put out doesn't work for the characters. One thing that production was very, and I wish this was the case now, but it's not, was that Mr. Roddenberry and the people of the production staff used to rewrite the episodes quite a bit. So Mr. Roddenberry, I believe, rewrote this episode quite a bit in order for it to fit with the characters and what was established as canon and what was established in the Bible, the Star Trek Bible, so to speak. Originally, you know how Edith Keeler dies? Spock pushes her in front of the vehicle.
Oh,
can you imagine that? And Harlan Ellison, being Harlan Ellison, was pissed about that for years. I'm like, dude, come on, you can't even. I mean, it might have been a great idea if you didn't know the characters, but come on, that people would have hated that, dude. Seriously, they had to rewrite that. They had to do it in a way that would, be consistent with the characters. And I do want to read it. I do need to read that version. That version is out. I think it's a comic also. But this version, I think, is the version. I'm glad they did what they did. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. Wow. Spock pushing her. That, I think that would have been a bit too dark. I think there would have been a lot of controversy at the time if that had been the release. But yeah, I'd never really heard much about this, the rewriting of it, but the story seems to go a lot deeper than I initially thought, with the links to the Terminator, that sort of thing. Yeah, I didn't know how big this sort of thing was, but yeah, overall, I mean, I love the episode. Yeah, a few other ones that I want to touch upon. The finale, Operation Annihilate, I thought was fairly good. We rarely see Spock being vulnerable, and that's the thing that I like. And I touched upon this with the use of time travel, but when they they restrict these character moments so that when they do come about, there's a lot of impact. In that one episode, and I've forgotten the episode, I've forgotten the name of the episode, but they're on the ship, and I don't know if it's some sort of creature or some virus, and it makes them. Actually, I'll tell you what it is. It's the one where Sulu is like running around the ship with a sword.
Oh, the Naked Time. That's the one. That's the one with. That's the one where they go to Psi 2000. I was just talking about this episode with Wakizashi's Tea House last week, actually. That's one where they go to the planet. The planet is disintegrating, so they have to the crew has to be on high alert, especially the bridge. They have to be ready for warp, or they have to be ready to compensate for the orbit at a moment's notice because of what they're doing. So they have to measure how the planet is disintegrating. And while that's going on, they also are determining why the people on that, because they have a base. They had like a little lab on that planet. They had like an observation post, and the people just died. They just froze to death. And so there's a little bit of a mystery there. And while we find out that they were hit by this disease that makes them drunk without, the usual slurs and everything. So it basically, it rendered them naked. Like their inhibitions were completely gone. And because of that, the crew just got out of control to the point where engineering got sealed, and he shuts off the engines, and they can't get out. They can't get away from the plant. They're spiraling towards the atmosphere where they're going to burn up. So the stakes were so freaking high in that episode. But yeah, that's what you're talking about.
And when we see what the virus does to Spock, from at this point, we've only seen Spock being, logical. That's all the key things we know about Spock is the only things that we've seen. And then we see him break down. So that was very sort of, mind-boggling at the time. We actually see him bringing up these emotions that he's been oppressing. So I thought that was very good development from him. And with Operation Annihilate, when we see the effects that the creatures in that have on him as well. Yeah, it gave us a sense of vulnerability. Never before have I thought that, even though I know in the future, Spock is there in the future seasons, he doesn't die, you actually felt extremely worried because the main characters, the main, three or the main bridge are usually pretty safe, but you actually felt like, damn, I think something's gonna go wrong here.
And if something's going to go wrong, you have to do it with the alien character who was 5 times or 6 times stronger than a human. So that would just make the stakes even higher. And we get that great moment in the bridge where Spock, under the influence of this parasite, tries to commandeer the ship. Remember that? And there's 5 of them. Maybe I could see if I could find it. 5 people have to like tackle Spock. Okay, so they already got him. So here, let me see. Yeah, they're fighting. There's 3 of them on Spock at this moment right here. Just look at it. It's crazy. It's stuff like this that always got me excited. I always liked it when once they had to fight Spock over something. There was like an influence, or there was something wrong with Spock. It always made it exciting. You were like, what's going to happen next? So. And yeah, we were concerned about Spock. Like, he had the virus. He had they didn't know how to beat this thing. They couldn't. They can't. So what this parasite does? It stings the person, and it basically takes over. It takes over the people, and the people kind of become their hosts, and they become their thralls, and they control them with pain. And if they don't do what that they're commanded to do, they die. They're meant to die. And it happens to Kirk. It happens to Kirk's brother, and it happens to Kirk's sister-in-law. So here, this thing hits Spock, and Spock manages to beat it with his intellect, but he still feels the pain. And what's great about this is that you see in Nimoy's acting, he's suffering. Like he does a good job conveying to the audience that he is suffering, but that he still manages to hold the control. And they're trying to figure out how to beat this thing. We find out ultimately, because the beginning of the episode sets us up, Denovan, the name of the plant, the colonist, goes into the sun and just says, I'm free. And then he burns up. And they're like, well, what about the sun causes this creature to die? And they've tried everything until the very end. They're like, oh, you need to do this in order to kill it. But then what happens is they use it on Spock's, because Spock volunteers himself for this little test. And let's just say something happens that would be, if he wasn't an alien, it would be irreparable. I won't say what it is. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen this episode yet, but something irreparable. And it was just, you felt for Spock, and you felt for McCoy who passed. And it was just like, I loved how, like, Kirk, the one thing that Kirk says, this is the one quote that I remember from this episode, and this is when he's really heated. This is like they really are trying to figure out what to. He's literally like, he tells Spock and McCoy in the briefing room, he's like, I'm putting you gentlemen on a hot seat with me. I need that third alternative, because the alternative is either killing everyone on the planet to stop this parasite from spreading, because the history of this episode was this parasite has spread from outside the galaxy, and nobody knew what it was. They just thought it was mass insanity. It was just mass insanity that was causing everybody to go nuts, and they show the pattern. And so with this episode, they needed to stop it. So the stakes were really high in this one. So like, it's really hard for me to say, like, this one was a great finale too. Like, a lot was going on. And I thought this was a great way to end the season. I don't know. It's really tough, because City on the Edge of Forever is just that damn good too. It's a hard one for me. So, but I love this one too. I know it's probably not as good, but I love this one too.
Yeah, I love this episode. And I think what makes this episode, but also the rest of them, so well is the subtlety. You have Spock, who's been infected, and it could have happened to anyone, but it had to happen to the I don't want to, what can I say? He is probably the most resourceful member of the crew. He is their powerhouse. He is the strongest one, but also intellectually, he possesses a lot more knowledge than the rest of them. So immediately you're thinking, right, if this can happen to Spock, it can happen to the rest of them. If this sort of premise was to air in a modern day episode, you'd have someone going like, oh no, Captain, Spock is the strongest one out of all of us. But there isn't any dialogue. It was conveyed in a way where you knew this because of all the previous scenes where you had seen Spock demonstrating his skills and his strength. And I think the moments that work extremely well, as you were saying with Leonard Nimoy's acting, is that he didn't have to say he was in pain. You could see it. You could see it in the mild facial expressions, how Spock always has this sort of stone cold look, but he felt warm in a way. He felt as if he was battling something inside. There was little twitches. He wasn't stoic as he usually is. So you knew instantly something is up here, not because they were telling you, but because you could see it in how he was walking, moving, interacting with other people.
Yeah, like this right here. This is what you're talking about. Like just a simple movement, just like this simple movement right here, just makes you feel for Spock right here. It's crazy. So yeah, dude. I like you really got this. Like I really enjoy doing the stream with you, man. So I'd love to do this again with you as you're watching more of the series. So I have to ask you, I don't know if you can do it. Do you have like a top 5 for this season?
I mean, I don't know what I'd put in like first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place. I could probably tell you 5 episodes that would be in there somewhere. I could probably do that. Let's see. His City on the Edge of Forever will probably be at number 1.
Okay, number 1. I agree.
Let's see. The Menagerie. I'll count that as one story. It's 2 parts, but I count it as one story.
I agree.
I'd say that'd probably go second. Where was it? Shore Leave. I think Shore Leave, objectively speaking, look, there's a lot of good things about it on paper, but I think what it just did for the audience, I really have a connection with that one. I'd say that one as well. And Operation Annihilate, and one that we didn't talk about, but one that I liked nonetheless, was Errand of Mercy.
Errand of Mercy, yeah, that's a great one. That's the one with Core.
And you get introduced to the Klingons when they invade this planet, and it was very much a different type of villain, because usually they go to a planet and they encounter some other life form already on that planet, and they're entering the pit, so to speak. But this time they go to a planet and it's all fine. This time there are other people coming into this planet. They are invading. So it's very much different. They weren't walking into the danger. The danger was literally coming to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how you have the episode begins with a war. Like, so they go to war. We learn who the Klingons are. So at this point in the history, before TNG came out, the Klingons were basically military governors, dictators. You're evil. I mean, they got the Fu Manchu mustache. The evil, like, get a little bit of the Chinese. And then later on with the movies, they were more based, or they were more in parallel with the Soviet Union, especially with Star Trek 6. You'll understand when you see them, when you eventually see the movie. But yeah, these guys were they were like 1984 militant, just total, like, just totalitarians. And like they had what do you call it? They had surveillance. They had the whole 9 yards. And if you kill one of their troops, they kill 200 of whoever they were occupying. So this episode was great because Kirk is trying to convince these people that they're in danger, and the people are like, no, we're not in danger. We're fine. We're fine. Come on, these people, we'll be okay. If there's anyone who should leave, it's you, Captain. And it was interesting how throughout the episode they're trying to convince these people that to fight back, keep the Klingons away, because the planet Organia was a key planet, like it was a key planet in a very strategic location, and that's why they went to Organia in the first place. And the Klingons brought a fleet there, and they're like, okay, the Enterprise has to leave, and Kirk and Spock are stuck on the planet with the fleet in orbit, and they have to pretend that they're, Kirk has to pretend he's an Organian, and Spock has to pretend he's a merchant and everything. And so they're just kind of fighting their own little private war. And the Organians are like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're committing violence. So, like, even against these people, you're still committing violence. That's something we can't permit. And they're like, well, you're a bunch of sheep, and you're not willing to fight. Well, we're going to show you how it's done. Well, what's funny was they never needed to fight. Even when the Klingons claimed that they killed 200 Organians, because there was a point where Kirk and Spock get caught, they get identified because the Organians said, "Don't use your brain scanner on them. I can tell you who they are. That's Captain James Kirk of the Enterprise." And they're like, "Dude, you betrayed us. What the heck?" And then the Klingon commander's like, "What do? You betray your people too?" Everything's like, I kind of like that. Like, there was that great respect between Kirk and Kor, the Klingon commander. Great dialogue, great delivery. It was so awesome. It was just one of the great scenes, one of the great moments between two different actors. And like, like I said, I'm a big fan of this episode too. Like, you can tell I'm smiling talking about this. But the big twist was the Organians weren't who everybody thought they were, and they never claimed to be otherwise, without spoiling the episode completely. But there's a reason why the Organians say everything that they do, and it's great. It's freaking great. So I don't know how you felt about that, about the payoff at the end.
There was a very good contrast, because you do have the Klingons, who are very much this, military type force, authoritarians, but you also have the native beings who have more power than the Klingons, but it's very much it's a very different type of power. It's not this physical type of power. It's very much their status, their intellect, their mental abilities. It does show different types of power, and it does show how different forces act within the Star Trek universe. And I thought that was a very good approach to take it. Star Trek, well, from what I've seen up until now, it does show both sides of different situations and perspectives. So to show how wars start, you had the episode with the computers, and you had this one with the military forces in the Klingons, and you have these people using different tactics. These people very much so their names are the Arcanians. Am I right in saying
Organians?
Okay. They are very much a peaceful type of. They want peace, but it does highlight how what I'm trying to say here is, overall, to summarize, it's just very different types of power. They don't have the physicality, but they have their mental abilities. I think that was very good to show different forms of power. It does I say this lightly, subverting expectations, but in a good way, because you see these creatures as very fragile. They're very weak. They need protecting, when in all actuality, they don't need protecting. It's very much from what we know as humans going onto this planet. We just don't understand them. And again, touching on that point of, a lack of understanding leads to fear. And, Kirk and Spock very much fear for these people, because they're not showing power in the way that we would. If we were being attacked, we would get on the defense. We'd, physically attack them back. These people take a different approach to it.
I agree. And it's just something that nobody ever saw coming. When I first watched this, I did not see that coming. I was like, I'm just like curious. Like, I was like, how is all this going to end? Like, they are outmatched, they are outgunned, they are outnumbered. Kirk and Spock versus the Klingon forces. It's crazy. So it just how they revealed everything. It's kind of, I mean, I kind of laughed at how ridiculous it was how they ended the war, so to speak, without spoiling. Oh, oops, ow, sorry. Like that. Just ridiculous ideas like that, making things too hot to handle. I mean, I laughed when I saw that. I heard that, and I still kind of do to this day. But it's something I can easily forget. because just of how entertaining the show is, and just how good it is, and how much it has earned my viewership, how much it has earned, my engagement. Just like, even like, the show is not without its criticisms, but I can easily look past it. I don't know about you, but I can easily do that. And like I said, like you said, it's just brilliant the way they did it. So
the way I would say this show is, I wouldn't say on paper it's perfect, but to me it's perfect. That's how I would summarize it. Like, it may not be perfect, but to me it's perfect. Like, there may be some flaws, there may be some criticisms, but I'm able to look over it. To me, I can tell that it was made with love, and there was loads of heart put into this, and there was clearly a load of hard work. So it's earned my respect on so many levels, if you're talking about the stuff inside the show, but also outside of the show, and how much the cast were dedicated to it. You have to respect them for that as well.
Yeah, the cast, the production, the crew, the writers, they were all dedicated to this. And I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, I'm still, every time I do like particular, episodes or streams that talk about a particular episode, I have a book called These Are the Voyages, an ebook, and I read up on the history of the episode, like where it came from, the process it went through. And like I said, I have nothing but respect for the production of like the production of this original series. Like, they cared about the content of their story. They cared about the content of what their character motivations were, and stuff that is now overlooked in place of quantity over quality. Back then, it was quality over quantity, and it's just something that personally, I miss. And like, when I measure, newer shows, I measure them against older shows, which is probably why I'm more critical than most people. So,
yeah, I think it's completely fair to judge the new material, with the older material, because they may have different technology now. They may have different capabilities to what they did back then in terms of the sets, the equipment, that sort of thing. But the heart of every piece of entertainment should be the characters, the dialogue, and that never changes. Yes, the sets may be improved. Yes, there may be more effects, but that shouldn't be what makes you fall in love with a show or a movie. It should be the characters, the dialogue. And even though the show was very restricted in terms of what it could do production-wise, I think that kind of added to it, because I think if they did have the ability to go bigger and larger in scale, I think that would have taken away from the small, secluded nature of the episodes. You find the characters confined to a certain area, which on paper may seem, bland and boring, but it actually allows the characters to discuss ideas and talk a lot about the situations they find themselves in. And I think that's what makes the show so great. It isn't the scale, it's about the situations and what the characters find themselves in.
it makes you invested in them. It makes them likable. It makes you want. It brings you back to want to see them in more situations, to see them in more stories, and that's why people. I mean, that's why they made 6 movies with these same characters. These characters are beloved, and no matter what happens with all the new crap that they're coming out with, they can never really take that away, regardless. I mean, I saw the motion picture and Wrath of Khan both this last year in the theater for the first time ever. I was not even alive when those 2 movies came out, and I saw those, and I got very, very emotional. I was just thinking, why can't we get more stuff like this? Why are we getting stuff like that? And it's just like you said, it's all about the characters. It's about the dialogue. It's just about the content of, like, I'm going to quote Martin Luther King again. It's about the content of their character. And that's what makes us come back. That's what makes us want to see more of this. And I might be repeating myself. I apologize for that, but it's just that damn important to me. It's just, and like the thing was, the later shows going up to Enterprise, 2001 to 2005, 4 seasons. Even that it wasn't perfect. Voyager also was Star Trek Voyager. Those shows weren't perfect, but they still had they still had that thing where they had the characters. I mean, it took us a while to get used to these new characters, but they became likable and we got invested in them. And the stories they wrote were pretty good for the most part. And now characters are not likable. The stories are not very interesting. The dialogue is terrible. They spew stuff that has no consequence, in my opinion. And it's just hard to get invested.
Yeah, when we watch these shows, when you ask someone nowadays if there's a new show or a movie, they'll usually say, "Oh, the visuals were good," or something, and I don't really understand that. Like, okay, but what does that tell me about the actual content of what I'm watching? We don't follow a set piece. We don't follow a special effect. We follow the characters. The sets aren't coming along with us. If in the series, they go to different planets and different locations, but those things aren't coming along with us. We are traveling with the characters, so to speak. We are seeing everything for the first time as they are, and that is what invests us in these characters. What carries the show forward and what summoned the future movies was the fact that these characters were beloved, and then people wanted to see more stories with the characters. That is obviously what created the love for the show.
So I got a question here. I'm curious what your take is because I'm not sure what to think of this. Some historians and the like say TOS, the original series, is modern Shakespeare, where the best Trek follows that. I mean, I'll say this. Only thing I could say is that the movie Forbidden Planet, which was a very big influence on this show and Star Wars and a lot of other things, was based off of a Shakespearean play called The Tempest. So I'm curious. Do you think that TOS is modern Shakespeare, Golden Age Geek?
I do. When you look at the Shakespearean text, it very much inspired the way of language. The language in which people spoke back then was very different to what we have now, and the works of Shakespeare did create that change. It did allow for creativity, and that's very much where the culture moved forward. And I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, the original series very much did that. We've been talking about the effects that it had, in our lives, but society, on a wider scale. So if you're talking about it from that point, it very much is modern Shakespeare, because we're always going to look back to the time of the original series and go, okay, this was probably the golden age of sci-fi. This is what moved us forward, and without this, we probably wouldn't have all the things we have now. Even though we may not particularly like what we have in this current day, it did pave the way for the future of the genre.
Okay, so here we got P.D. York saying, praising the visuals about giving the artists who poured their heart into the product their due credit. Okay, absolutely, sure. I mean, I'm not an artist, but I'm sure art takes a very long time to put together and to, just to get right. Saying something sucks and leaving it open-ended is wrong. Attack the problem of new Trek. Attack the writing. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, yeah, I mean, I can say that, visually, some stuff looks decent. Discovery does not look good. Even the ship. I don't know if you've ever seen the ship, Golden Age Geek, the ship of Discovery, which was based off of something that Ralph McQuarrie did. And if you don't know who Ralph McQuarrie is, he was the one that pretty much created the look of Star Wars for the original trilogy. It's probably one of the ugliest ships I've ever seen, or at least the way they implemented it. It's one of the ugliest looking ships ever. And so, once again, like you said, if you decide to tackle new Trek at one point, they got a cautionary warning right there, because it's going to probably, because you're not going to get the thoughtful, insightful storytelling that you get from TOS or later TNG, DS9, even Voyager and Enterprise, which a lot of people don't like. I still can accept the Star Trek, but the stuff after that is really tough to like. I don't even call it Star Trek. I just call it New Trek. It's a wholly different thing. I mean, some people like it. I don't know why they like it, but some people do, maybe for the sake of being part of the community, not to get, completely destroyed by other people. But yeah, when it comes to Trek community, I'm very wary of who I deal with. So But since you're watching Trek for the first time, and I know you're part of this community, I feel like I can have a conversation with you. And so far, this has been a great conversation, dude. So once again, I thank you for coming on and doing this with me. I know I think it was like 9:40 for you right now, or it's like 10 o'clock your time in the UK.
Yeah.
So, dude, anything you want to promote? One thing I do is I like to help people promote wherever they have. Do you have a channel? I know you have your website that you manage. Do you have a channel or anything else you want to promote?
I do have some things I want to promote. First of all, I wanted to address the comment that we read out. I mean, I understand that the visuals, of course, there's a whole team that go into creating this CGI that we have now and things like that. So I don't know if this is what this person was necessarily saying. I'm not attacking the people who, put all their hard work into the visuals. I'm not saying that. It is very good to have, a nice setting, a nice visual representation of something like a planet or something like that. So I'm not attacking the people, the visual artist, but what I'm saying is there needs to be a balance. The visuals now are coming before the story, that sort of thing. If there's a balance of everything, because a story is an amalgamation of loads of things. It's the script, the cast, and then other things like visuals and all that. So of course the visuals and the production should be praised. Of course it should. So for anyone thinking that I'm attacking the visual artist, that sort of thing, I'm not. I'm just saying we need to have a balance of everything. Everything should be working together to build the overall story, that sort of thing.
I blame the management. And in my case, I blame Akiva Goldsman. I mean, they have to be. I mean, they're responsible for everything. They're responsible for every aspect of their project. Akiva Goldsman was running. I think he helped run Picard season 1. He ran season 2, and he ran Strange New Worlds season 1. Well, because of the fact that I gave Strange New Worlds a chance, I managed to get through 5 episodes. And I was just like, I'm done. And yeah, P.D. York, I totally agree with this one right here. The artists deserve better showrunners. Totally agree. Like honestly, like it's like, I mean, and this is the case in a lot of companies. This is the case in the industry. You have people, you have talented people in different parts, but then when it comes to writing, like you have like the least talented people out there who have like, and I'm going to agree with a lot of, bigger content creators, much better content creators than I do. Lack of world experience is very telling in this. Like people haven't really gone through things like loss or being alone or being on your own and everything, and just are dealing with really complicated feelings. It's just it's very shallow, and the characters are just not written well. Now the artwork, everything is pretty much professionally done. You have cinematographers, you have great artists, you have people, you have professionals. I mean, like Hollywood has a lot of professionals. Like they hire good people to do stuff. And the thing is, their stuff, I mean, at least as long as they get paid, I'm good with it. And once again, a lot of people say we don't have any problem with, the people working on the ground, doing all the technical stuff. It's just the writing. And the thing is, it suffers when you have bad showrunners. It suffers because they don't get the viewership, and then shows get canceled. And the thing is, Hollywood's just like, once again, it's very fleeting. It's a very fleeting industry. Like you might have a job one day and you might not have a job the next day. Or if you piss the wrong person off, you're out of the industry. We are never working in this town again. Bullshit, everything. So, but it's just, yeah, I totally agree. And I'm breaking my own rules. I'm in a month and actually in a few weeks, actually, it's getting closer. I'm nowhere near prepared. I'm going to cover Picard season 3 because Mr. Burnett said he saw the show twice and he said it was good. And he's been critical of Trek ever since 2009. So the fact that he said that bears a little weight to me. I know a lot of people are going to say, Trekporeal, you're acting the fool. And I'll be like, well, you know what? If there's going to be a hint of some good Trek, I need to see this for myself. And I do plan to cover it. So, because once again, like this is a very emotional, like I mean, this is not my oldest fandom. I mean, I've been a Zelda and Mario fan, Nintendo fan longer than anything. But Star Trek is probably one of the most deep emotional fandoms for me because I've been a fan since I was a kid. This was something that allowed me to kind of get over the fact when I didn't have friends, I didn't have people to hang out with. I was pretty much alone. I didn't know any fans until a few years ago, to be honest. Like I was pretty much alone in my likes for this. So I just had myself to really enjoy this with. I didn't really, I mean, my brother got into it. My younger brother got into it eventually, but this was one of those things I was really into alone. And that's just how much this meant to me. That the fact that I was willing to be into this just by myself. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get too emotional on you, but it's
no, it's fine.
But it's I mean, like I said, this is a great franchise. I love it. I love this season, and dude, I'm glad you joined me. So thank you, man. Anything else you want to promote?
Well, I don't think we've addressed it. There is a super chat from DJ Ronnie G.
Yeah, you're right. tells you how much of a blast I'm having. I didn't even realize that. All right, so DJ Ronnie G for $5. Thank you, by the way. Thank you so much. The Discovery looks like a rusty or bronze pizza cutter, especially when the saucer spins around the bridge module. Yes, it does.
It really confuses me, this, the modern sets and all the effects they use, because on paper it should look better, but it doesn't. If you look at something like all the effects and sets from the original series, yes, I can tell that it's been manufactured, but I don't know, it looks more real to me. I don't really know what it is with all the modern stuff, but it's too fake to the... Well, I mean, of course, what we know we're watching on the screen is fake. It's not actually real, but it's too fake to the point where it looks really fake, if you get what I mean. They've put too much and too many effects into it to the point where it doesn't look convincing anymore.
Yeah, like just it's just like it's like they put, there's a lot more CGI in the scene than there is practical, whereas in the original show it was practical. I mean, they used a whole bunch of material, stuff that they could just... They literally used coffee lids, spray painted those, and made those buttons or handles on a console and everything. It was stuff like that that just made it look like... I mean, it didn't quite look lived in because it looked pretty cheesy, but it still looked... I don't know, the cheesiness is what I really found endearing as a kid. Now, I was a kid in the 90s, and so you had when I was growing up, I was surrounded by shows like Babylon 5, DS9, Voyager. Like I watched Voyager as a kid. So seeing the original series and seeing the color, the choice of color and the cheesiness of the sets and the colorful, the colorful characters, villains, and everything. That's why I found it endearing in the first place. And it was really the higher ideas that I really started to really get invested in when I got older, especially when I became a teenager, when I became an adult. And that's why this stuff has stayed with me. I like to this day. I mean, it's been 27 years since 1996. I've been a Trek fan since 1996. So it's been 27 years. It's been 27 years. And it's something that I just don't think I'll ever get tired of. Like, this is one of those things, this is like if I was in a very dire state, like if there was something going on, something really, really crazy, like this would be my thing to go to for comfort. Like going back to original Trek, watching the original movies, watching this original series would be something I would go back to for a comfort viewing or something. Like, that's just how important this is. And I'm so glad that you're watching this. I'm glad you're getting a lot out of this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled to be along for the ride of watching this show. And I can't wait to see all the things in the future where it goes. And I have to ask you, where do you think is the point where I should not stop watching Star Trek? Because I probably will watch the new stuff, even though I probably shouldn't if I want to save my my soul. But where would you say is the point where it goes downhill? Like, where's the point where you go? Because as you said, you don't refer to the new stuff as Star Trek. You refer to it as New Trek. Where would you say is the point where that sort of starts?
Where New Trek starts. Okay, so you have this series. You have the animated show, which was a 1970s production. That's really up to you if you want to watch it. It's basically a continuation of this show. There's a fan series I would definitely recommend that almost flawlessly connects this series to the motion picture. It's called Star Trek Continues. It's a Vic Mignogna. It's a Vic Mignogna thing. It's on YouTube. Definitely, it's 11. I believe it's 11 episodes. The writing of those and the production values is so faithful to the original show, and his not only followed up on episodes, but has like basically made other episodes better, in my opinion. So that's a series I would definitely recommend watching before going into the movies. And of course, then you have the movies, the original 6, and then of course you have the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. You have the Next Generation films. You have Voyager and Enterprise. After Enterprise is where between Enterprise and then the end of Enterprise and really where it starts is with 2009 J.J. Abrams. Star Trek is where it really becomes New Trek. So that's where I would say, if you're going to watch it, be skeptical. Be skeptical and be as critical as you could possibly be. I mean, Enterprise has its issues. Voyager has its issues. But to me, they were still decent Trek shows. I mean, they could have done things differently, but you can watch them and still enjoy them, and still manage to maintain your disbelief and everything. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. I've seen some clips circulating on YouTube of some of the new Trek stuff, and it just baffles me. There's that one scene from Picard, I think, where he's trying to use a toilet, and I'm thinking, what? He's like, yeah, just what is happening? You have this old Picard he's sitting down on a toilet trying to use it, and I'm thinking, who thought of this?
I'll tell you this: Discovery has copied elements of Game of Thrones. That just goes to show you how creatively bankrupt they are. And Picard kind of goes into grimdark territory. That's the issue that fans have. Star Trek is not a grimdark property, but they go into grimdark ideas in New Trek, and they go into dystopian ideas. And that's not what Trek is. It's never been that way. And that's what fans don't appreciate for the most part. So, like Picard, for instance, there's a character from Voyager who survives, gets one of the main thing about Voyager is it's about a ship that gets hauled to the other end of the galaxy. And throughout the 7 seasons, they are trying to get home. They're trying to get back to Earth because, you know, the where they are, the Delta Quadrant is 75,000 light years away. So they're at least 75 to 80 years away. So they're like a couple that they, even if they went in maximum warp, they wouldn't get home for 75 years, which would mean the crew that's there would never make it back. Like it would have to be a generational ship type of deal. So, but they encounter a character, young boy, teenager. I was a teenager at the time that this came out. And Picard comes in years later. This is almost 20 years after Voyager ended. They have this character and they just murder him. They begin the episode by just murdering this character, this character that I liked from Voyager. And I couldn't believe they did that. I don't know why they did that. They grimdarked the hell out of the show. They didn't do really any world building, and it's just like, why even make this if you're not going to even, why even make this if you're just going to piss people off? Like what's the point? So, like I said, like I'm trying to rewatch it for the sake of watching season 3 of Picard, which I've heard was really good, even though I can tell you this, they don't follow up on any storylines in New Trek or anything. Like they have a serialized story for a season, they end it, and then they just kind of wipe their hands. They wash their hands, wipe their hands of it, and they go on to another story in another season. They don't follow up on anything. And that's what I'm assuming season 3 is going to be too. Season 3 is going to have nothing to do with the previous seasons. So there's really no incentive to watch New Trek. Like they don't give you an incentive to watch it. Like they don't reward you for remembering details. They forget their own fucking details. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about any continuity. They don't give a shit about anything. If they don't give a shit about anything, why should the viewer? Why should we?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That's very much what we see in all entertainment. It's all sort of this. It's all the same thing now, and that's what's really irritating. It should stand out, but it doesn't. It's all you can watch one thing on Disney and then watch something on Paramount Plus. It's just the same thing, really, because there's no story, there's no character arc. You can literally just watch it, and it doesn't really mean much.
Yeah. So I would say watch from original series to Enterprise, and then after that, high warning right there. So
Yeah.
warning that your head might explode. So that's where I'm at. But just to reiterate.
Okay.
All right, man. But I think this is a great point. It's been 2 hours. It's a longer stream than I usually do. So once again, dude, thank you for doing this. I want to have you on again. Would you want to be on again? Talk season 2?
Yep. Of course.
All right, cool. Yeah. So you have to keep me up to date on like how far you are. So you said you're on Metamorphosis. Have you watched Metamorphosis yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of who the founder of the warp drive is.
Yes.
There you go. I'll just say this. What's funny was I saw that episode the same time there was a movie that they came a TNG movie where they actually meet the character, where the TNG crew meets that same character, and they help him invent the warp drive kind of while fighting the Borg without going into too much detail. So it was funny. I saw that episode the same time I saw that movie. So it's a weird thing, even though there's just a 30-year gap between that and the movie. So just telling you.
Yeah. So just to leave it off, I know we've kind of gone on some tangents since this was first mentioned, but just to plug some things. So yeah, Golden Age Geek on YouTube, Twitter, most platforms. I've got that. I am going to be here's the thing. I've had this stream planned for over 3 weeks now, and it hasn't really happened because of course, my main area of expertise in fandom is Doctor Who. Growing up on Doctor Who in Britain, that has been like you are with Star Trek, I am with Doctor Who. It is my bread and butter. So I actually have some people from Geeks and Gamers going to do a stream with me, and it's been delayed so many times because they've had some personal matters, which is fine. Things happen, but hopefully this Wednesday we've been rescheduling it every Wednesday. So hopefully this Wednesday, but we'll see. And we're going to be talking about, very much similar to this stream, we'll be talking about season 1 of Doctor Who, that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, having some big names on there is, I'm really happy to do that, be able to talk with them. I make videos on, I mainly focus on Doctor Who, but I have been diversifying my content. Talk about different franchises, DC, Marvel, that sort of thing. I'm going to continue.
Seen The Last of Us? Have you watched The Last of Us? That's a new big thing now.
No, but I haven't seen it, but I know what happens because I've seen many people review it, that sort of thing.
I don't think I was okay, but like I liked the first game, but like watching the episode was just kind of like, maybe it's because I know what happens in Last of Us Part 2. That I'm just not invested. I just can't get myself invested. It's funny when you know things, you know where things are going to go, and that kind of influences how you feel. Yeah,
and it's a shame that we have to look at these properties now with that lens of, I'm just waiting for that thing to disappoint me. It should be, no, this is exciting. There's going to be more of this. Not, okay, I know in a few episodes' time they're going to do something that's going to infuriate me. Because that's what we've seen time and time again. And after a while, you just grow to expect it.
I mean, the thing is, what was going on is, they're losing trust. We can't really, relationships are built on trust. And if Hollywood keeps doing this stuff, they're just going to, the fact that I feel this way is not a good thing. Because I used to be excited. Like, when Lord of the Rings first came out, I was excited for it. I read the books. I thought it was going to be good. It was good. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Still love it to this day. And a lot of when they did announce something, I used to get excited for it. Now I don't. Now I'm just like, what are they going to do? How are they going to disregard source material? That's one of my biggest beefs is disregarding source material, which is done all the time now. It's like it's a trend. It's like Hollywood's modus operandi now.
Yeah, they can't think of anything original, so they have to take what's come before and then just pervert it.
Yeah.
That's what we see a lot of, and it is annoying. It is really annoying because, I mean, part of me doesn't know. I mean, most of me thinks that they don't even know what the source material is, and they just use that as an excuse of, oh, we know what the source material is, but we think going this way is better. When I think they just don't even put any effort to actually invest themselves in the franchise, and that's why I say that I don't think they've watched any of the stuff that we've watched, and they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's what I think too. So.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I have, man. Thanks once again, dude. Thanks a lot for doing this.
No, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to it, and I'm going to continue to watch Star Trek, and I'll come on any other times you want me and talk about that as well.
All right, man. All right, then, everybody, take care. Have a great night. Stay Trekporeal. May the wings of Trekporeals carry you to the next Trekporeal stream. Take care.